Welcome to Yes Also. I'm Suzi Barrett, and you are going to love my guest today. Her name is Stephanie Allynne. You're a fan of her from L Word Generation Q and One Mississippi, which she also co-wrote with her wife, Tig Notaro. In the improv world, she trained at the Groundlings and UCB. She was a member of the Groundlings Sunday Company. She was on the UCB Herald team Arts and Athletics and the house team Last Day of School. And she toured the country with her very popular four-person team Wild Horses. We get into Stephanie's fascinating backstory. She dropped out of high school in her senior year with a 4.1 grade point average and pursued comedy, and, well, it worked out. Remember to check out our Instagram at YesAlsoPod for supplemental photos that show the journeys of our guests through their improv careers and lots of other fun stuff. And now, to the episode. So, now that we're talking, I want to chat, first of all, about your origin story in improv because it's crazy to me. Talk about, like, how improv came into your life and then what you did to go get at it.
Okay. In high school, I started going to the Groundlings shows, which were, like, sketch shows. And then I was very taken by that. And when I looked at the little pamphlet to take classes, I was like, oh, it's improv is like the intro class. Like it starts with improv.
What grabbed you in the sketch shows? What took you?
I think I still have this sense of humor of just like big characters and people like doing ridiculous things, fully committing. I find so funny.
Are you laughing for the right reasons? Like, are you finding
I don't know.
Okay.
I think so. I think when it's done, like, I think Martin Short is so fucking funny.
Yes.
And that sort of level of silliness and like over the top, but somehow it's not bad.
Are you on board, like the full end of the spectrum, like Clifford?
Yes.
Yeah,
Love.
you're in.
You're in.
Yes. Jeremy
when
Glick.
People are like, Jiminy.
Jiminy. Sorry. My God.
I mean,
Jiminy.
I'm like, this man is so funny. I think he's funny in Father of the Bride, like the whole thing.
Oh, he's hilarious in Father of the Bride.
Like when people were like, Clifford's a terrible movie, I was like, oh, right.
Yeah.
Because as a kid, I saw them like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen.
But to clarify, you're not laughing because you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy's doing this.
I think it's a little
face.
of both.
Yeah.
Like him as Jiminy Glick, I'm like, oh my God, who is this person that will like go do this on a red carpet?
Right.
And like tip over his chair.
Right.
And then when I was in high school and I went to the Groundlings, it was when Melissa McCarthy was way before she'd ever done like TV and film, and she was doing sketch shows, and she was like doing, like toe touches on a trampoline. And I was like, wow, look at this world.
Gotcha. Yeah.
In a sketch.
Yeah.
And the sketch really appealed to me. And improv, I was like, oh no, what's that? I guess I have to do that first before I do sketches.
Right.
And it scared me.
I guess I'll take this prereq algebra class so I can get into that
and get to
karate.
Calculus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, and now on the other side of that, I love improv more than anything, way more than sketch. More than anything. It's my favorite.
I love that. When did the tip happen?
I immediately. I think it's that thing when you're younger or you just haven't done it where you're like, oh God, what if I'm not funny? What if I don't know what to say? What if I freeze? And then when you learn like that's impossible, it's like, oh, the people that are prepared, the people who are overthinking or come in with an idea are ruining this.
Right. And me. The me's of the world.
You.
Yeah.
Coming into a scene.
I can feel your passive aggressive notes
Performing
here.
with you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
You're not that way though.
I used to be a little bit, or I used to like. I'm such a Virgo. You're a fellow Virgo, but like,
same birthday.
Yeah, that's right. I can be rigid, or I can be. When a scene gets going and I think I know what the scene is, or like the writer in me takes over and I'm like, oh, I see where we can heighten this, or I know what this is going to be.
Yep.
And then I get
You
thrown.
want the control of it going there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or there's a comfort in like, aha, now we can relax and play X, and somebody does Y, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm getting better at it.
That's so funny.
Yeah. And the other thing is like, in premise work with UCB's stuff, which I love, and it changed my improv for the better in every way, and like really made things click for me. Like learning, there's a game and there's a thing to find, and we can play one thing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to complicate. We're not meandering through a life story and a plot, and we're not, but the activity of pulling a premise, pulling an idea and formulating a premise and like initiating it, just that little bit of writing, I think in the shadow side of that is that for me, it like drives me into so here's my idea. And it's like, if the other person doesn't get that.
Right.
But there is no like getting, it's like, why didn't you get it?
I must do solo improv.
Right. And Beck Drysdale talks about the difference between improvising and just being a fast writer, and like how you always want to make sure you're improvising and not just like, Right. So that's my issue to constantly work on. It's gotten better over the years, but
I don't have that
Great.
at all.
Amazing. Lucky you.
I think that's why like preparation scares me. It's like, oh, I get to just walk on and I have no clue what's going to happen, and that's so comforting.
Totally.
It's like the one time in life where you're just like, oh, we don't have to think. Like when I see stand-ups at a show memorizing their thing or going over their act before, I'm like, oh God.
Right.
Like I love that you can show up anywhere and do it anywhere without anything.
Well, and the level that you play at, you can trust. You're playing with people who, like, things aren't going to go too far off the rails.
Right.
Like, the train might jiggle a little bit, but you're not. Yeah.
That's right.
What were we? So you're talking about you were taken by you
the
fell in love
world.
With. Yeah.
Well, I think I don't know if this is true now with the internet being what it is, but like for my age group and yours, I would imagine, is like, all you really had was SNL to look at as like, that's like, you're either a comedic actor or you go do SNL and you be like, that's the route.
Yep.
And so I was like, oh, Groundlings, like you look at the wall and I'm like, that's the route. This is where you start, and then you do this, and like that looks so fun. And then it took me doing that and then simultaneously finding UCB to go, oh, I actually like I like to do grounded scenes. I really love scene work. I like eye contact. I like figuring it out together. I like all of that. The element of surprise.
You like Jiminy Glick at home in his bathrobe, talking to his
laugh
wife
at
of
Jiminy
40
Glick.
years.
I'm not going to be Jiminy Glick.
Right.
I'm like the furthest thing from
you've
that
made
on
peace
stage.
with that.
And I when I went to the Groundlings, I think I was doing what I thought was so funny, and people were kind of like, yours are a little weird. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, what? And then I'd see other people do stuff and I'm like, that's so stupid. That was the worst sketch in the show. And then it's like, actually it went the best. Like the people were like really laughing at that. And I was like, had to learn what the general public thought was funny.
Yes.
And I didn't really work. That didn't work for me.
That's a tough lesson.
That was
my major
tragic.
Yeah, I know. That was a big lesson when I was at Boom Chicago.
Yeah.
It's like, and eventually like why I got burned out on it. Because it's like, okay, I've been here 3 years and the common denominator among all the public is the same, and it hasn't moved and it hasn't changed, and it's still jokes that are basically just George Bush is stupid, Britney Spears is crazy,
right?
Michael Jackson touches kids. Like that is what the public wants to see.
Right.
Give them that.
They're
or
like,
perish.
We think so too.
Yeah, right. And like how many different ways can you find to do those? But they don't want different ways.
Right.
They don't want to be surprised. They want.
Or it's just sort of mimicking back to them something that's already crazy. It's like if you do an impression of like a reality show, like The Bachelor or Real Housewives, and then you're playing those characters that are already absurd that they're watching, then they laugh at that.
Right.
Because it's like, oh, I know that.
Right.
That's funny. I'm recognizing this as funny. That celebrity impression is funny because I know that celebrity. But you're in this weird world of like mimicking. Like that to me is like, we're not creating something out of nothing here.
Right. That gets at the thing here is like you're in this game because you want to create.
Yeah.
You want to
see what
discover
happened.
things.
Yeah.
And if you're just doing parody or you're doing things that have been done before, it can be funny to people, but you're riding on the same tire tracks that somebody's already made.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I just find it depressing.
Right.
It's really I'm like, oh God. Or just like things you can do for a laugh. I almost don't do because I'm like, it's like the rebel in me or something where I'm like, oh, the rule of 3. I'm like, well, I'm not going to do it a third time.
That's so funny.
How embarrassing.
Right. Or I'll do it a 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th.
So you stop laughing and I kill it.
Yeah.
Like it's like all this shit.
You are angry at the audience. What
Not
audience
anymore.
hurt you?
That audience.
God.
They all did.
Can we delve into the audience trauma?
No, this is something I have where I'm like, I need to like work on connecting with the audience more. And I do think that's like really beautiful. And I think at the Groundlings when I was doing stuff, and this was what I was doing early on. I haven't been at the Groundlings for like a million years, but I remember doing things that I was like so excited to get into a show that I thought was so funny, and there'd be like sprinkled laughs, you know. And to me, I'm like, oh, my people.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't like that didn't go well. I'm like, I don't need the roar.
Right.
I'm just like,
one person who gets you. I have that same thing. I say that comedy is sonar. And the same way that, you know, bats throw out a signal and it bounces back to tell them where their food is or whatever. Yeah. It's like if I say something that I think is so truly deeply funny and I get one laugh from the back corner, I know that like that back right corner, that's my person.
Yes,
that
exactly.
person gets me. And it's the same at like a dinner party or a gathering. It's like the people who laugh at what you think is funny, you want to hang out with the rest of the night.
Right.
You're like, okay, well, I don't need the rest of the party. I found my little group of 2 over here. And like, yeah. I've met some of my best friends that way. It's like, oh, this is a connection point. We both laughed at that weird, dumb thing.
Yeah, and you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
And like people that I find so funny usually say the thing where I'm like, oh my God, exactly.
Right.
That's so specific to that thing that that.
To that.
And
it's so specific to
that random thing. But I do feel like I'm like, well, I want the audience, most of the audience to be laughing and enjoying themselves.
Right.
But I think what the Groundlings like really fucked me up with, because I don't dislike audience. I think is that roar of laughter that sometimes comes when something's like low hanging fruit I believe is fleeting. It's like it's like the laugh comes, but then at the end of the show, they don't remember it, or that wasn't their favorite moment, or something. Sometimes when I think something is so deeply funny, I almost don't laugh as loud, or it's almost like, oh my God, that's so funny.
Yes.
So I have trouble with like even just laughter as like a sign of success.
Yeah. That's really astute. Yeah, because I when you said that, I clocked that in real life, like watching TV and stuff, I'll do that. I'll say out loud, that's so funny.
Right. When it's like, when I
with
think
a
it's
straight
so
face.
funny. Yeah.
Like I'm not smiling. I'm like, oh my God, that's really fucking funny.
Yeah. When it's like the real funny.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Interesting. Okay, so you discover improv. Are you in high school at this point when you take your first class?
No, I dropped out of high school and then I took my first class.
Walk me through that really quick, because I just want the audience to like know because I find this so fascinating. So you were in high school when you saw comedy.
I was in high school in California. I would go to those shows. I was like, I basically was like, I'm going to go to college and then I'm going to come do this.
And wait, just really quick, because I don't know this about you. So you were living in Temecula, right?
Yep.
It's like 2.5 hours away.
Yeah.
Who's driving you to these Groundlings
I would
shows?
come up by myself. I would come up with my family. I would come up with friends that came into town. I'm like, you got to see this.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. It was like take anybody I could.
Get in the comedy wagon. We're going
Yeah.
pack a sandwich.
And I had a lot of family in Los Angeles, so it made sense. We came up here all the time.
That makes sense. Okay.
And then I moved to Buffalo, New York my senior year, and then dropped out like a month into my senior year.
A month into your senior year, and the reason you dropped out?
I had a 4.1 GPA, and I was like going to be salutatorian, not valedictorian. I was set up to be salutatorian because I took theater instead of marine biology. And that took me out of
biology was offered at your high school.
Yeah. And that was
My
like
school was like math, English, history.
I mean, I didn't go to a great school, but they
Clearly
had that.
not. We were studying dolphins. It was so pedestrian. I wanted to be at the bottom of the ocean with sperm whales,
and here we are. Okay, so I did. So I moved, and the whole thing, I was like AP everything, have to get A's, overachiever in every club because I wanted to go to NYU, and I'm like, this is how you go to NYU. And so then I moved to Buffalo, New York, randomly. Moved back there. I had been there when I was also younger, and then went and toured Tisch School of the Arts for the arts, and on the tour was like, oh, I don't want to go here. And
what? Any particular? Was it a vibe, or was there like a specific?
Multiple things. I think there was a vibe where I thought that's where all my people were, and then when I got there, I was like, wait, these feel like the same people.
Too much dark eyeliner. Too many clove cigarettes.
Not my people. Wait. And my tour guide was from La Jolla. And I was like, wait.
Too close to home.
Like, in my mind, I was like, that's like the actor's studio. That's like Ellen Burstyn is there.
Oh, gotcha.
And I was like, I want to be in New York.
You're like, where is young Meryl Streep?
Yeah,
where's
like,
the next Jodie Foster? I can't be all of them.
Like, they're not reading anything and talking about it.
Right.
They're just like the same.
Right.
And I was very like, oh no. And then this girl,
I picture you like dressed in your Annie Hall suit, like a little folio
guys.
under your, just hungry
to where?
Yeah. Okay.
Those black and white photos.
Ellen Burstyn. What teenager just like in your room falling asleep at night with like a poster of Ellen Burstyn on your ceiling?
God, I read her autobiography. I was just like, I love her.
Of course you do. Oh, that's so funny. Your soul has such an identity. Has such a thumbprint.
And I'm like walking around like, where is she?
Okay, so Tish turns you off. That ends your dream.
Yeah, and I will say this girl that was also on the tour who I thought seemed pretty cool, raised her hand in an assembly of people and asked, what happens if we get accepted and we can't afford it? And this woman had like a very sort of like polished answer. She's like, well, we have a lot of financial aid and we, try to make it happen. And she goes, well, what happens if you don't qualify for the financial aid? And then the woman goes, well, then you can't come here. Oh. And I was like, what is this place?
Right.
Like where it's just like, and then like the La Jolla girls, like with their Louis Vuitton, like, I love it here.
Yeah. I'm an artist.
Yeah.
And I have my own perfume line because of my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love acting. But the thing is I know a lot of people that actually did go to NYU where I'm like, oh, I might be generalizing.
Totally.
This, so I actually
June and Casey went there.
Yeah.
Like you might have known them.
Kate, Berlant, John Early, they all were there. So but my experience was like, oh, I don't want to do this. And so I dropped out of school that Monday. I'm like, well, I don't want to, well, now what am I doing? Like if I
That Monday, you were at Tish over the weekend. You returned to Buffalo. You closed.
My whole life, my whole future. I'm like, I need a new plan.
Slammed your locker shut. Spray painted a big middle finger on the principal's face.
See ya.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's so crazy about dropping out of high school is it's super easy. You just don't go.
Just don't go.
Like
easy in practical practice. Like it's easy to not go to something.
Yeah, I just
but
thought
it's
there
not,
might have been some pushback.
It's not like mentally or like spiritually easy. It's not emotionally easy to be like,
Okay.
and now my whole future changes and everything's uncertain and I might not ever have a job. Whee!
That Monday, when I dropped out of high school, to this day, I wake up every day thrilled I'm not in school.
Wow.
And I have recurring dreams that I'm back and have to finish high school, or I'm like, oh, I should have finished. I should do. And it's like, oh God, I'm back. I hate school.
School's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we are opposite Virgos. You're like, okay, so I'm going to decide and I'm done and I'm decisive and I'm going to carve my own path. And I'm like, I don't like this, but I have to do it and I have to finish it and I have to do the, it's like checking the boxes.
But that's how I was up until that point,
Mm-hmm.
but the freedom in like not doing that in life, don't you hate that feeling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate being me. Thanks for bringing it up.
But is that like, you still feel that way of like, oh, I'm supposed to do this, so I should do it?
I do have that with some things and not with others. But like I'm frequently teased because like if I have a list, like I'll keep lists in my phone of like movies I want to see or like TV shows. Yeah. And it's like it gnaws at me that the list isn't done.
Yeah.
But then it's like, well, but it's never going to be done. The whole idea of you hear about a movie that you want to see is that like you don't want the list to be done because then you don't have anything to watch.
Right.
But I have that like, do you remember the Frog and Toad books?
No.
Did you ever read Frog and Toad? No. It was a requirement in my high school that didn't have marine biology.
High school reading.
Yeah. Beautiful children's books about a frog and a toad who are friends.
Oh.
But there's I almost called it an episode. There's a book where Toad has a list of things to do and the list blows away and he has a nervous breakdown because he doesn't know what and so now he has to make a new list and the first item is find the list. So yeah, I don't know. I have a little bit. I have like a good girl, good student.
Yeah,
in me.
yeah.
I think like I was aiming to please my parents and get love through like doing it right and achieving. Yeah. So I think that still lives in there. But I also have a trailblazer now. Like but I did not have it. I don't know of a single young person who has the wherewithal, the confidence, and the maturity that you did to be like, nope, boom, I'm done, and I see a different path, and I'm going to do it. And then you did it.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, yeah. So matter of fact.
That's right.
Honestly, the only other story I've heard of like that is Tig, your wife.
I know.
And it's wild that you two found each other, and you're the same way. Yeah.
It's really weird. And we're both that way in life. It's really like it's almost like when you start to be told something, you go a little bit like you just immediately question it.
Yeah, you're innately a rebel or a little bit of a contrarian or what is it? Iconoclast, counter something in there. I can't get the right syllables.
I don't know.
But what you were talking about with an audience where it's like, well, I don't have to do the rule of threes. I'm gonna do it twice.
It's embarrassing to me. Or it feels manipulative. I feel like it's like, oh, I know this little trick and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, manipulative
bugs me.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, it's almost like I'm not going to put you all through that.
Right. Let's not demean you guys by me yanking you around with this. Yeah.
Right.
Similarly, do you hate magic acts. Because that's basically that. Is like they know a way to
Oh,
fool
yeah.
you, and it makes I love watching magic.
I've never even thought of, I'm like, if I were like, I despise magic, I'm like, I don't have an opinion
have
on
an
it. I'm like,
opinion.
what do I think of a magic
Even
trick?
that is rebellious. First person I've ever met who has zero opinion about magic. So that's a real I love it or I hate it. You just
Yeah.
do
I
firmly apathetic.
never think about
Huh.
it.
I want to go to a magic show with you. That's the next
And
item
I'm
on my
like
list.
the biggest fan. I'm like, how?
That's me. I like literally. I love it.
Yeah.
I've cried at magic tricks before. They're so incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you like in it, that's like illusion, right?
I don't love the big stage illusions because I'm like, well, there could be a wire. That smoke is pretty plentiful. You know, I don't know what angles you're using or if there's a mirror behind that curtain. Close up magic. Like when the person is right there,
Yes.
literally inches from your hand, and you're watching the cards.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had magicians at the Magic Castle do things that are so mind-blowing that like the only explanation is that they're the devil.
Right.
Like truly it's like, or like a witch, you know.
I've
it's like,
seen that.
you know, like where the guy goes, think of a card, and I think of one, and then he goes, look under your drink, and like the drink that my hand has been on, there's a card under it, and it's the card I was thinking of.
I know.
What is that? Well, but you're like, I know. Still nothing. I just can't find an opinion.
I'm not like flocking to it, but that is weird.
Okay, so you quit high school, and then you free floating for a while, or is comedy on your radar as?
Yeah, I came back to LA, and I was 18, and I did the Groundlings, and then they have like, I don't know if this is the same now, but they had a lot of like waiting periods. Like you'd pass a class and then you'd get on a wait list to be in like a different level. And so in that interim, I saw a UCB show, and I like was like, this is way better and this is actually what I want to do. I couldn't believe it.
Which part of it? What appealed to you?
I think being at the Groundlings, and it's sort of like that style is short form and it's character based, and it's like first thing like two people out and you do space work, and then like pick a character and an emotion, and you take like 5 seconds to do your space work, and the other person on stage is doing their space work.
Are you mirroring each other?
No.
One of you is fishing and one of you is stocking shelves. Okay.
And you're just a decided character that you're like, I'm gonna play this character. And somebody might have said like, you're at, Jamba Juice or something, and then you do your space, and then you look at each other, you notice the other person's space work, and then you like do a scene. Just as two characters in a scene. There's nothing you're following. There's no game. There's nothing. It's just get who, what, where out and do a funny scene.
That's very similar to IO. Just I think IO didn't have that like bent towards big characters.
Oh,
it was,
okay.
like more grounded characters, or they didn't instruct us to like create. I think Groundlings guides you to creating original characters, right? Like that's where Pee Wee Herman came from. But IO is very like, agree on your space like through object work, and now see what happens.
Yeah.
like,
and just be crazy, a little crazy.
Yeah.
So so you find the comedy in like a weird voice.
Well, there's the difference. Groundlings is like be a little crazy. IO is like be truthful and the audience will laugh. Truth and comedy.
Yeah.
It's like be truthful, but can we like also have a point? Like we've been in this scene for 6 minutes and nothing funny is
right.
Yeah.
And you're just talking like somebody, and then that's how their sketches work. And somebody said this about the Groundlings where I'm like, oh, that's really true. It's like if you watch a sketch, and probably true of SNL too, but like if you watch a sketch, it's like they say the phrase was knock knock here comes crazy is how the setup of every scene, which is like
at Groundlings.
Yeah. And I think if SNL probably because it's the same kind of thing, but like essentially it's like, okay, here are the normal people having cheese and crackers, knock knock, you open the door and someone has like lipstick all over their face and they're like, Aunt Kathy's here. Hey guys. And you're just like, oh, here's the character
Aunt
with
Kathy. Yeah.
And then everyone else is normal. You can't have too, unless
Right.
the two people are doing it together.
Yeah, it's all fish out of water sketches.
Yeah.
It's all like Matt Foley is the like failed
Yes.
motivational speaker, but the parents and the kid are normal.
Right.
Which is UCB teaches that, like, it's like have one unusual thing.
Yeah.
They're just not formulaic about having it be just an absurd character. It can be any unusual thing. It can be two normal characters, but something is unusual about.
But they don't even look for they don't even say unusual thing. It's just like everyone else respond normally to crazy.
Right.
I mean,
but,
they don't
the
say
crazy character is the unusual thing, is what I'm saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they don't, I mean, obviously they don't say crazy in their curriculum, but it's like point of view.
Right.
That's how they teach characters.
And
like, what's their point of view?
When you and I say crazy, we're not saying it as a dig towards anyone in particular. We're not canceled. I know that word is unsavory now. We mean zany and wacky.
Yes.
Just a disclaimer.
Good job.
Thank you. Don't cancel me. So you discover UCB. You're blown away by...
I saw a show called Motherfucker. I think Mother Effer. And it was like a bunch of women, and I was like, oh my God, they're all like actors. They're normal. They're just themselves. They're stepping out. Two people are just stepping off the back line and talking and finding it. And just that alone, I was like, oh my God, that looks so fun. And the groundedness, and where you could go, oh, these people could be on a show. This is like, and they were. It's like, oh, this translates to acting, which that appealed to me. Whereas
people who were currently on shows, like on TV, or
no, I don't know. Yes, that group, and just UCB in general at that time, it was like, oh, this translates to like scripted 30 half-hour comedies and the Office and Parks and Rec and Mindy Kaling like all of that was those UCB people at that time, whereas like the Groundlings can go to SNL, but you can't really put that it's not in a TV
sketch doesn't live in the real world, but those shows like Parks and Rec, like they're funny and they're a little bit absurd, but they're real enough that it's believable as a real situation.
And I think you have to kind of approach it a little bit from an acting standpoint. Even if you're playing yourself, you're still in that like natural, this is, one person says hello, the other person says hi. Like you're in the real world of conversation.
Something I love about your improv that I've like learned as a lesson from you and I try to absorb is like, I remember years ago you and I were doing that like Pepsi commercial thing. And it was like we had to play characters based on people's Facebook pages. We had to like turn them into a character. And I was doing all these like, I was like really, I caught myself being like really loud and really like theatrical. And you were playing them very like grounded and speaking in like a normal, you were speaking like you had a lav on, like you had a mic on. And afterwards I was like, oh my God, like I'm always playing like I'm a high school theater kid, like trying to reach the back row. Yeah. And I really took that to heart because I'm like, oh, I don't have to like yell that much. And I still catch myself doing it, or I catch myself like mugging, pulling faces, But yeah, that's something you do really well is you play grounded, you play for film on stage. And at UCB we can.
It works.
It's a small enough room and it's intimate and the seats wrap around the stage.
Right. Groundlings, it doesn't really work.
Right. Well, and I've seen you do those shows too.
Or everyone's like, what am I watching? But I also I think I've run, there's a little bit of me where simultaneously to doing those classes, I was doing a lot of commercials when I was 18 and
brag.
I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. Anyway, so what were we talking about?
But I'm available for more. No, but I learned in commercials at that time, just the simple idea of less is more, where you would see people come in and really try. And then if you just stood there and were like, what? You'd get cast.
Yeah, one blink is all it needs,
Yeah,
and
and
like
then
that can be the reaction.
and they're like,
yeah.
everyone's dying, and you're
Yeah.
just, or at the end of something, you're just like, huh, and they're like, her. It's like that, and I think that was horrible training for me because it's like less is more, yes, when you're trying to like offset that sort of like theatrical actor into TV and film, but then I think I've gotten to a point where it's like nothing, where I'm like, okay, I need to do something. I got it all the way down to nothing. And I like, now I'm like, oh my God, this has run its course. Like, I can't keep playing roles where I do nothing.
There's such a sketch in that. That's such a like mini mockumentary, like someone who's like stripping down their comedy until it's nothing. And then it's like the last scene is like they don't show up for the show. It's just like a turtleneck on the stage.
Completely gone.
Long pause, then crowd goes wild, standing ovation.
Less is more.
Less is more. Yeah. But so it's interesting that you're saying that you've clocked that you've pulled too far back. What makes you notice that? Or are you self-conscious about it on stage?
Yeah. I think I think being so scarred from the Groundlings, when I came to UCB and I was doing sketch at UCB, I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm doing this. And that sort of like, I don't know, just like very calm, very grounded. And then I've started, and I got work from that and things, opportunity from that. And it's very comfortable for me. And now I'm like, I've said this to you, like people who have done Boom Chicago, who can like really come out on stage and like introduce a show and host a show and bring a lot of energy to a show. I'm like, I have to be on stage with those people because I'm not doing that. And then sometimes I'm like, I'm way too far into this to not be able to do that. But it's not my comfort zone.
And that's fine. Like, I don't think everyone has to be able to host a show with energy or,
Yeah.
there are I feel like there are different superpowers on a team. Like,
right.
There's value in the quiet, cerebral person, and it almost ruins it if they host the show, because they are slightly uncomfortable and the audience can feel that. And it's like, it starts the show off on a weird note. It's
right.
like,
right.
Who's driving this fucking airplane?
Oh, no. I'm more comfortable than her. Who's driving the airplane?
We should be in the air. We're just driving down the highway in this airplane. But yeah, they're not comfortable. I think even if it's very subtle energy, the audience is not totally confident. But then, and it also robs that quiet cerebral person of the joy of like when everybody's doing big stuff and then they just enter and say a deadpan line.
Right.
Crowd goes wild. Like, it's so fun to have contrast in a show.
Yeah.
I don't think everybody needs to be everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm saying that to like put your mind at ease.
I won't try then.
Yeah, please stop trying.
But I think of it more in acting, where I'm like, I would like to prepare for a role. I would like to make an effort. I would like to really try and like do something that's more in a character acting role than always playing this version of myself, which I always get cast as. And I like recently was doing something, and it's like, it's gotten to a point where I'm like, I don't need to be on a show just to do that. It's not fulfilling. Like, of course I'll do it, but it's not fulfilling to me. It's like a little boring.
Right.
And so I've had this recently, and like my favorite actors who I think are like super funny, super talented. Ellen Burstyn. Don't improvise. And when I see that, I'm like, wow, so you don't want to improvise. This is all prepared. Like, this is so thought out. This is so worked out. And you're like showing up and doing it.
Do you have like top of your head, like who you're thinking of when you say like your favorite actors who are like that?
Well, I mean, like people like Sarah Paulson or Billy Crudup, like people now that I'm watching on shows from like, or like seeing Sarah Paulson do Linda Tripp. I'm like, oh my God. Like that.
I didn't see it.
Oh my, it's like the greatest performance ever. and it's so fucking funny.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, that's funny out of her preparation. That's not funny like I'm showing up on set and finding funny things.
Right.
And hopefully it makes it in, or hope.
You're buddies with her, right?
Yeah.
Is she funny in real life?
Like the funniest person.
Funniest. And she just no interest in improv or in
right.
that.
Like,
yeah.
And she like has like a movement coach and does like preparation.
Wow. It's almost like clowning, where it's like, and I say that with respect. I love clowning, but like where it is like about control of the body and like, or like
all
finding a character through like how your eyebrow moves, or
right.
how your character grabs a coffee cup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like that, I'm always going off natural ability of like, let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's sort of like nothing happens. It's just nothing. It's purely nothing.
I wouldn't say that. Like a little bit more than nothing happens. Like nothing plus one stuff. Don't sell yourself short.
But I got cast on a show. I feel like I may have said this on a podcast before, but I'm not going to say the show. But I was cast on a show where we were doing the auditions were improvised, and I showed up for my callback test, like testing for the show, and we were just put with groups like in the waiting room, and it's like, God, this is all resting on like, like we're in these random dynamics, like you have no clue what you're gonna do, and this is how they're casting the show. And I go in there, and as when you get to a certain point in improv, you're like, anything's fine, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
This guy that was in there was so fucking crazy, zany, off, wacky.
He was not invited to the audition.
Actually, no. Maybe it was mental illness. But he was really like not a trained improviser. He was so out of control. It was completely paralyzing for the scene, where I was like, oh, I can't even get in this. Like, I'm just going to sit here because this is so nuts.
Yeah, his gravitational pull is too strong for me to have my own.
And I sat there and I just completely was like, okay, I'm not going to get this role. This is like, it didn't work out.
Right.
And then I got cast on that TV show.
Congrats.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, great.
It's over.
Do you want to name the commercials you were in when you were 18?
We have time.
Many. A&W, Honda.
Every car. When I was 18, I looked 14.
Pigtails.
I was 21 and I was playing an 8th grader going to my 8th grade dance in this commercial, and my date was 14 in real life.
Oh my God.
And I was like, I said to someone, and I was like, well, they're like, where's do you have to go to tutoring? And I'm like, I'm 21. And the producer was like, don't tell anyone that.
Right.
And it's
this
like,
is statutory
really
casting.
Weird. Kid is actually 14. Okay, anyways.
The director's like, and why don't you two have a sweet little just peck on the lips at the end? You're like, oh, sweating. What if I think my character's more of like a high five girl?
High five. High fiving all my young boyfriends.
Right.
Okay. So what I was saying about that. So when I got cast on the show, the guy who was the showrunner was like, oh my God, that was so funny when you just like gave up. And that guy was so insane. And it's like, oh, so I fully booked this role because I was like...
Because you checked out.
Yeah, completely checked out.
In a way, though, I can see where that is amazing, or that it does show good listening and being in the moment, because you're in the world with that guy. You're not going to fight.
Right.
It shows a level of empathy and presence where you were reading that moment and going, there's no way I can fight this guy out of where he is and land on the same page.
Right.
The only answer is to let go of the rope and let the boat drive away.
But again, less is more to absolutely nothing.
Right. But it got you the part.
Then here I am working.
Yeah.
It's just such a weird, but that's why I'm so taken by those other actors, because I'm like, God, that would be amazing to like actually work on something to that degree. Yeah.
Do you feel like that itch will be scratched in the arena of scripted roles, or is that something you want to bring into improv, or will bringing that into your improv fight with what you love about improv, which is
Yeah.
anything can happen and I'm not in my head and I'm going with it. Yeah. So
it's unrelated.
It's in the acting realm. Yeah. What would be a dream? Is there like are you like, I want to play a weirdo serial killer or someone dark or like something like that?
I'd like something so far from myself.
Right.
Because it's just more interesting to me. Or like just something. Yeah. Something.
Write that. You're
and I don't want to write it.
You don't want to write it. Somebody else
That's the
writes
thing.
it.
I don't want control. I want like.
Oh, I see.
I want the acting piece.
Yes.
Because that's the one thing I've never done.
Interpretive creativity.
Yeah.
Rather than generative creativity.
Because I think when you're an improviser and a writer, it's really easy to look at a script and go, oh, I'll just do this, or I'll just change it, or I'll say this, or whatever. And like those people that are like, no, it says in the script to walk over to the chair and sit down, and you have to find a reason why you're going to the chair,
right?
Whereas I sometimes go, I'm not gonna sit in the chair. Do they really need me to sit in the chair? Like, okay, or fine, I'll go sit there because they told me to.
Right. What would I do? Rather than how would this character do what is written in the script?
Like respecting the writing to that degree of like, I'm not gonna do I'm going to fully do what's on the page.
Yeah.
And know exactly why I'm doing it.
You know what's insane to me is like, during the Oscars when they give the award for screenwriting, they often show a pan of the written word on the page while the actors are saying the lines. They overlay it. And it always blows my mind because the reminder that what the actor receives is a cold, hard, like Courier new font on a barren white page, and they add life to it and a twist and a pause, and it's like those always give me new respect for the actors. Like screenwriters, yes, they started with a blank sheet and they came up with it amazing, but I'm like, God, I would never say that line that way if I saw it written that way.
Right.
Oh my God.
But that's that like thing of like when you find the character first, then the line comes through that,
right?
Instead of I'm memorizing my lines, I'm gonna play it this way. Even like somebody like a Meryl Streep or something, it's like she doesn't write, she doesn't direct, she doesn't produce. Like she shows up with
slam.
She does nothing. She's like
slam.
me.
She's like me.
We're so similar. But she's so funny.
Oh, Meryl Streep is hilarious.
So funny.
God, I just rewatched Defending Your Life.
Oh yeah.
And the moment where she's falling in love with him, where they're at a comedy show.
Oh yeah.
And like she's watching him watch the comedy show. And you can see the moment she falls in love with him based on what he's
laughing at. Yeah, that's right.
Right. Sonar, see?
Yeah.
But yeah, she's incredible. Have you ever worked with her? Could you?
Constantly.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing that's ever been filmed, but
I am constantly
working together.
I bet she'd be an amazing improviser.
Yeah.
She's such a good listener.
Well, I think that movie that she did was fully improvised, that Soderbergh did, where they're like therapists. It came out like a few years ago. It's fully improvised.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Her and who?
Diane Weiss.
Jesus.
Who else is in it?
I gotta go change my underwear. God.
One second. We're going to take a quick
11 a.m. and here I am.
I feel like it came out during COVID. I can't remember. Like, it's something amazing. Like, we're all talking. Listen to us.
Wow. Yeah, you are a writer. Wow, that was amazing.
And what did you say?
It's something like I talk and then you talk, and sometimes there's a pause in between.
Yeah,
that's the title.
It's the Meryl Streep.
It's the Meryl Streep story.
Meryl Streep movie.
So what's next in your evolution? Like, do you think are you? Because you have so many skills and so many things, so many arenas. You've directed and produced and acted and written and improvised. Do you see that that's all heading towards something, or are you just along for the ride?
I guess a little of both. I mean, I wrote a movie that I'm about to direct and not be in.
Amazing.
And that feels very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I feel more like in writing and directing, where I feel like improv is like a huge part of it. My training in improv is a huge asset.
Yeah. How does that show up?
Like directing, I feel like, okay, especially something I wrote, I'm like, okay, I know what this is. I can shot list it. I can block it. I can talk to actors about it. I know exactly what I'm doing. And then that like ability to on the day go, okay, none of it's going to go as planned. And I am totally fine with that. And I love actors so much that I'm like, sure, you don't want to do that? Do whatever. What do you, how does this work for you? Like I can like lose it very quickly.
How do you trust then that it will all come together? Because directing is so much about planning and so much about being like, we need this coverage and we only have this amount of time and this crew has to get this. So like, how do you trust if you let it kind of go off the rails on purpose that the story will still be told or it'll all come together? And
I think because I know it so well.
Gotcha.
That it's like, and I do trust. I would never bring in somebody that was going to go off the rails in a way. Like, I don't like that vibe.
You didn't hire that guy from that audition?
Well, you know that, like, there's something, like, that works on stage in improv of, like, oh, my God, you came up with so many ideas all at once off the top of your head is, like, so funny in live improv. And on film, it's like, we've lost reality.
Right.
Because nobody is watching a movie going, oh my God, they just made up all of that. They don't know that you improvised all of that.
Right.
And we're not looking for like a pause break to see how like quick your brain works.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, the magic is gone because it's like my thing with magic tricks on a big stage with smoke. It's like, well, but there could be a string. I don't know.
Right.
In film, it's like, I don't know that wasn't written and memorized. And
yeah.
You know, in improv, you just see it happening live. Yeah.
And like what I don't like in TV and film and in comedy too is in comedic stuff is like if the people in the scene are waiting and they're out of the reality just for this moment. And then now we all like go back to the scene.
Have you seen people do that in filming stuff where they just depart and like try to say something real clever for a while?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then you're like, oh, you're not a real improviser or you're not a real actor because that's too off. Of course it's fun to let people go and see what happens. That's different. That's like if you greenlight somebody to go, hey, say a bunch of things and do whatever you want in like a Robin Williams way, and then you're gonna pick and choose, like that feels different. But I think people that are like, I love to improvise and then they like leave the scene,
right,
that's where it's like, and what is the person that's doing on the other side of that, just staring at you like
watching you do your one person show?
Yeah.
Or sometimes in the context of like a lot of times, like, have you had this in commercials? You improvise a line and they keep it. And it's like in the commercial and you're like, man, I could have gotten a fee for that.
Yeah.
Like I ended up being the punchline of the thing.
Yeah. And I feel like that works in scripted stuff too, where it's like if you just throw in one line or one response or something that's like still in the scene, rhythm of the scene, I feel like that usually works really well. But then, it just, if we go off the rails. But I think that like, I've done a lot of stuff where somebody's like, oh, don't worry about the lines, just say whatever you want. And you're like, you can just paraphrase. And like, that's such a style. And then there's the people, like you're on another show and they're like, oh, that was a period. And you kind of dragged that into the next line. And you're like, where's the
You
period?
made it a semicolon.
Yeah.
And we really need to, we only have
No,
the budget for a period.
Supervisor comes over like, did you not see
man.
it's actually a semicolon?
Also, like, I was on a couple of Disney shows and their legal is so tight. Like, you have to be really word perfect with the scripted stuff. And it's like, they'll like circle like you said can't and it's cannot.
Right.
You know, like, wow,
that's
my bad.
so hard.
Yeah. It's hard.
That's where I'm like, oh, see, I didn't prepare. Like when that comes at, the script supervisor comes at me with like all that like real detail. And I'm like, oh shit, I don't actually know this line. you know, and then I
Yeah.
have to like quickly look at their script and be like, oh, it's okay.
What have I done? I gotta go back to high school.
That
Could somebody
dream.
call Buffalo?
Buffalo.
We're running out of time.
This is it.
My hourglass is empty, and I still have to change my underwear from that Diane Weiss Meryl Streep revelation.
Let them all talk, I think is
Is
the
it?
actual title.
Wow. Okay. And the subtitle is, and we will listen if we
can.
have time. Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me,
This was
Suzi.
awesome. Yeah, I could truly do this all day.
Same.
Do you have anything you want to plug or brag about? Any more?
I think I got them all in.
Any more credentials from your past? No. What commercial? Yeah. Okay.
No.
Great. Got them all in.
Thank you.
What's the name of the movie that you're making?
It's called Trees and PhDs.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm about to start pre-production, hopefully.
Congratulations. And where will we be able to put our eyeballs on it?
I'm not sure
Okay.
yet. It's an independent.
Independent. Great.
Yeah.
Enjoy your independence.
Thank you.
And thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
If you have a question about improv that you would like me to ask a future guest, email it to yesalsopod@gmail.com and I will get it on the show. If you're a fan of the show, follow us on Instagram @yesalsopod. And please help us out by liking, rating, reviewing, clicking, sending, talking, and blasting us to your improv communities. That will help us out a lot. If you're a theater who would like to host us for a live recording and improv show, let us know at yesalsopod@gmail.com. A huge shout out to Ryan Rosenberg, who produced this thing with his generous help and his unlimited knowledge about all things podcast. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. No, we won't, Suzi. That's not how podcasts work. They will see. They won't even see us. They will listen to us. So it's actually the opposite of both things you said. Thanks for listening, and you will listen to us next week. Maybe. I don't know.